It is absolutely true that you can't feasibly lethally overdose on cannabis normally, but what I did was not normal, nor was it safe, and it almost led to my death. I deal with multiple mental health issues. I'm diagnosed with depression and OCD, but I have other things going on as well. Because of that, I've been on 40 milligrams of Prozac daily since May. I've been dabbling and getting high since January. My grandfather's a stoner, and we have good times together, smoking and talking under the stars or at the beach or just chilling in his van. So when I started taking these pills, I checked for interactions on Google. It said that cannabis shouldn't be used with Prozac, as it can cause serotonin syndrome, which is potentially lethal. I was quite disappointed, but I did further research on it online and saw that many people use weed on Prozac with no issues, so I thought, well, the risk is probably low. I thought that with the amount of people that have used and abused drugs on Prozac and have used weed in tandem with medication to help with their mental health issues, this serotonin syndrome shit is probably a WebMD-esque scare. It didn't help that I'd seen it mentioned before with other drug interactions that turned out fine, but yeah, I just ignored it. Big mistake. I started using regularly once I bought a bit of weed off of someone and had some gifts from my grandfather stocked up. Just to quell some of the comments I know are coming, this shit was all entirely legit. I know for a fact. The people I bought from were highly trusted, and I used stuff from the same bags as my grandfather and friends, who never told me they felt anything strange from it. I decided I was just going to get high often for a while, as at that point in my life, I had nothing else to do. Unemployed, mentally ill, and not allowed in my house for most of the day every day. This was around late July. I'm not an optimistic guy, but even I can admit I'm in a better place now. Anyway, I started using, and straight away, things felt different, a lot more intense. I thought it was just the strain, that I found some really good shit, but yeah, when I smoked, I just get so fucking high. I get all shaky and lose a lot of physical awareness, and just float and spin around the room and forget what I was saying and have a hell of a time. The euphoria was crazy. I loved it. I was fucking hooked. But looking back, it wasn't what I thought it was. It started with the shakes. Once I had started using a bit, they just never went away. I was a bit worried, so I looked it up, and according to the internet, getting weed shakes was normal when high. So I just thought I was a bit odd and I would get them after I came down. I'd never gotten them before, but my use before was always few and far between, with relatively mild strains. So that's what I thought it was, even as they got so bad I could barely roll a joint. Those fuckers I did manage to roll looked goddamn ugly too. As the next week or two rolled around, and they got worse, I just ignored them. Accepted that they would be a part of my life now. As well as that, I started craving weed more and more. I never felt like that using before. It was like the cravings I got when I would get myself into a bad rut with alcohol, but worse. I ignored that too. I'm such a fucking dumbass, honestly. But I wouldn't learn that till one particular night. It was a Friday. I sat and smoked in the forest that morning and got entirely fucked. I just laid down and listened to my favorite album at the time. The experience was magical, beyond anything I had felt before. I wanted more. So that night, I decided to smoke again, twice in one day, something I hadn't done before, but I figured it was going to start happening soon enough. I waited for it to get dark, then went out on my balcony and lit up. I wanted to get the smoking done quickly, so I was taking a hit every second breath or so, which was another fucking dumb mistake, but I didn't really know at the time, so I didn't really blame myself either. About halfway through the joint, it hit me like a fucking freight train. I was excited and happy, so I kept smoking with vigor. But as it got more intense, I decided to put out the joint and put it back in my pocket for later. That decision likely saved my life. About 20 seconds later, I realized I needed to sit down, so I stumbled onto my knees on the deck. There was an intense pressure in my head and this high-pitched ringing sound, something I'd experienced before whilst high, but this was on another level. I wasn't scared because weed is a relatively safe drug under normal circumstances, so I just rode the wave and ended up passing out. I heard my deodorant can that I had brought with me fall out of my hands and onto the deck as I left my body, and the world went black and indescribable. The noise of the can rang in my head, and I heard whispers and had strange fragments of dream and hallucination play in my consciousness. But as soon as I could think even somewhat coherently, I started to try to regain that consciousness and my composure because I realized the noise must have awoken the other people in my house and I couldn't let them see me like this. I desperately tried to get up and get to the door. The whole world was strange. I couldn't see properly, and I kept blacking out as I went and falling back into the weird dream hallucination state, but I managed to navigate back to my room. After a strained talk with my family members, I was now free to enjoy my high. I lay in my bed twitching and shaking and laughed to myself about the craziness that just occurred. It seemed fun to me now, like some kind of fucked up adventure. Things got even crazier from there. I started feeling intense euphoria and got super hyperactive. The room distorted to look much longer than it was, as if it was stretched out. I felt like I was slightly removed from my body too, but the craziest thing was my phone. As I held it in my hand, it started looking really strange, as if it was some kind of stream of information. It's hard to explain. It looked kind of fake as well, and I could feel everything I did on it and felt connected to all of it. I could see it normally, but I would see it in this weird way at the same time, like a metaphor coming to life. It was a hallucination that would come in waves of intensity, and my mind would often devolve into more weird fragmented hallucinatory trains of thought as well. It was wild and kind of amazing, and I was grinning ear to ear and enjoying it. I started spamming my boyfriend and convinced him to call me so I could tell him how amazing everything was and what just happened to me, even though he was right in the middle of doing things. After that, I just continued to enjoy everything, until I didn't. After a while, I don't know why, but things just started to feel off. The euphoria was gone and so were the hallucinations, but the shaking and twitching was getting more intense and my muscles were tensing up against my will really badly. This had happened before when I got high that first time. My muscles would all slowly tense up more and more until my back was arched and my whole body was entirely stiff. At the time, I just thought it was me reacting to the feeling of floating, but now, I didn't feel that way. And it was still happening, worse and worse, faster and faster. My shakes were so bad I was making the bed shake. I was sweating, my heart was beating incredibly fast, and the pressure in my head felt insane and incapacitating. That was when I remembered serotonin syndrome. I thought, surely not. I'm just really high and paranoid like those people who go to the hospital convinced that they're dying. But I checked the symptoms, and they all fit. Agitation, crazy fast heart rate, dilated pupils, loss of muscle coordination and twitching, muscle rigidity, sweating, shivering, high temperature, tremors, irregular heartbeat, even loss of consciousness. My heart slowly sank as I read that from there. It was seizures, coma, and death. Fear engulfed me. At that moment, as my entire body was racked with twitching and shaking and tensing, I knew I was going to die. I was stupid and I fucked up, and this was how it was all going to end. I started crying. I couldn't believe I could be this fucking stupid, and I was about to pay the ultimate price. I desperately tried to contact my boyfriend, but he was out driving, so I left him a message and just accepted it. I didn't want to call an ambulance because I was ashamed and afraid of the consequences. I am suicidal, so I don't mind dying too much, although I hadn't done everything I wanted to do at that point, so it did upset me too. I wanted my boyfriend with me, and I wanted it to be peaceful when I wanted it, not like this. But this was what was happening, so I put on some comforting music and relented to it, let the spasming and all continue. Except, my boyfriend came home and freaked out and called me. The terror and pain in his voice still haunts me to this day. He stayed on call with me for the next few hours as things got progressively worse. I struggled to hold on to consciousness. The feeling in my head got to levels of intensity that I didn't even know it could reach. My entire body kept shaking and seizing up more, less controllably than before, faster than before. My heart beat so fast I thought it was going to burst right out of my chest. I was sweating profusely and I was burning hot to the touch. I tried to stay awake and talking, but according to my boyfriend, there was a few times in which I stopped talking and started letting out these strange moaning and choking noises, shaking so crazily he could hear through the speaker of my headset. I'm not sure if I had any seizures at that time or not. I got so worn out and tired that I stopped fighting against it, once again waiting for my death. But slowly, as I wrote it out, I started to improve. I started noticing that the tensing of my muscles happened at a lower frequency, and I could stop it as it was happening more. The shaking lessened, and the feeling in my head started to clear. I realized that I was out of the woods, and I was honestly the most happy to be alive that I have been in many years. I may want to die, but I did not want to die that night. Not like that, and I didn't. Eventually I managed to get some sleep, and I woke up the next day almost fully recovered. I was still shaky and extremely tired out, and my heart felt kind of fucked up, but I was fine. At least physically I was. I can't describe to you how scarred and traumatized I felt that next day. I went to the beach and just quietly relished in the beauty of nature, knowing full well that I may have not seen it at all. I felt like everything was strange and I was removed from the world. I felt I shouldn't have survived, but I did. And now months later, I haven't touched weed at all. It was hard for the first week, like really hard. I hadn't used for that long, but the withdrawals were honestly insane. I put it down to the fucking up of my serotonin, but I wanted it so bad. I wanted it all, even with the brush with death attached. I didn't care. It took all of the self-control I had to give all my stuff away, but I'm glad I did. Because a few weeks later I got a job offer, at a job that required drug testing prior to being hired. I have that job now, and I'm really fucking grateful because it's amazing. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that awful experience making me lay off the weed, and I'm going to continue to until I'm no longer on any SSRIs or medications that affect my serotonin. And I advise that you do too, because although it doesn't seem to happen to everyone, I still would not want anyone to go through the utter hell that I did. Feel free to call me a dumbass, because I was. I'll never make the mistakes that I did again, and I want to get this message out there, because I don't want anyone else to make them either. Yes, please be careful when mixing SSRIs and weed. You don't know the reaction that could happen to you. With this guy, the reaction was terrible. People don't believe me when weed affects me in ways like this. I always get some sort of anxiety attack on it the first hour I smoke, and after that, it's perfectly fine. I don't understand how that happens, but it just does. Apparently it goes along with my metabolism since it's really high. That's what someone told me and I looked it up and now I believe it. But if you're taking any kind of antidepressants, please be careful when smoking. My friend last year went to Vegas on a plane, and he's prescribed Zoloft. When he came back from the trip, he kept going to the hospital because he felt like he was going to die, like every single day. He had no idea what it was, and neither do I. But after reading this story, I think I know what it might be. I think it's the mixing of his Zoloft and weed. He was a big pot smoker. He also got COVID too. I don't know if that had anything to do with it either. But let me know in the comments what you think of this video, and if you enjoyed it, please be sure to give it a like, and if you're new here, please consider subscribing, and if not, check out my other videos, and maybe that'll convince you too. I also got a new mic today. I'm testing it out on this story. Please let me know how it sounds. Alright, thank you guys so much. I love you all, and have a great day.